Well, hello to you. You're tuned into Elite Business Live. We're here in central London, and as if by magic, I'm joined by a fantastic panel. Very nice to see everybody this morning. It's a bit of a reunion, actually, for half of us. Haven't seen Piers for far too long, but it's lovely to see everybody. Lara Morgan in the house as well. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about customers. We're talking about how to nurture relationships with customers that love us, that never want to leave us, but also we want to hear the tricks and techniques that have got everyone where they've got to. So let me say, Michael needs very little introduction, co-founder of Seven Hills. Thank you for that keynote, Michael. Why don't I jump to the end? Roan Lavery. Have I said your first name right, Roan?
That's right, you have, yeah. That's right.
Now, I'm fascinated with what you're doing as the co-founder and CEO of FreeAgent. So this, thank goodness, is putting people in control of their finances. Sounds like a sort of good dashboard, take away the stress.
Yeah, that's right. So we've been around since 2007. We're effectively an online accounting software firm, and we support the smallest companies. So our customers are the very, very sort of smallest micro businesses. And we help them deal with their finances, their taxes, their invoices, all of that sort of stuff.
Well, thank you. I want to know how you get them and how you keep them as well. Let's jump back down to the other end, keep the camera team on their toes. Lara Morgan. How are you, Lara?
I'm very well.
It's very nice to see Lara, formidable entrepreneur, started a business, sold a business, keeps on investing in other people's businesses and being their sort of partner in crime. You're much more than an investor, actually. You keep getting drawn to consumer businesses, though, don't you, Lara? You have got a soft spot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a product trader who grew up in Asia, and I have the advantage of language. So ultimately, I'm very lucky to look at great British invention, and then finally, because it used to wind me up that we used to seem to sell everything off to everyone else, so product related.
Yeah, so well, let's get some plugs in though. Gate 8, great luggage, thank you very much.
Okay, let's keep going. Yogi Bear, awesome performance grip yogi mat. She's a brilliant young entrepreneur who is so authentic, it actually is tear-jerking, her story, so that's worth looking at. We have Centered, which is in my pocket, mindful, healthful well-being.
All right, we've not.
You know,
it's not QVC, right? All right, okay. No, but thank you for the work that you're doing on that. My yoga instructor said, "How flexible are you?" I said, "I can't do Tuesdays." Sophie Milliken, looking very good off the back of a big launch party. You're on to your next one. You've grown businesses, multi-award winning, particularly in the human resources space. But now you want to get people known. Basically, you want them to be unmissable.
Absolutely, yes. So I think that one of the key successes in my last business was when I became more well known, and it was through things like speaking at things like this, writing books, press, etc. And it just made sales really easy, because when you turn up to a sales meeting and people know who you are, it's just like a really relaxed conversation. It's really, really easy to sell, and you get fun opportunities off the back of it.
Got it. No, so thank you, Sophie Milliken. Your latest business, Moja Group.
That's right.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I wonder if there's a dark side to that, because if everybody knows who you are, Piers Linney, as a dragon on Dragon's Den, you probably got pitched and still get pitched in every bloody corridor in the world.
Pitched in trains, restaurants, men's toilets, you name it.
Yeah.
At least it's the men's toilets.
Yeah, I'm in the right one, yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. Well, Piers, you're much more than just a former dragon. You're a serial entrepreneur. You invest in other people as well. You're the co-founder of Atherton Bikes. I hadn't realised that before this year. What's that?
3D printed titanium carbon mountain bikes with world champs. So that's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. But at a very different angle, the co-founder of Moblox as well, so a very digital business.
Yeah, so Moblox, we want to disrupt the small business services market, and communications and IT, everything a small business wants from one place.
Brilliant. So I'm getting these intros into your mind, so you start thinking, what am I going to ask these very interesting individuals? Why don't we give them a huge round of applause, welcome them to our gathering. Right. So it's going to be all killer, no filler from here, because I want to know, be as blunt as you like, how has what customers want, based on what you've seen and what you've lived firsthand, how's what they want changed over the course of the last couple of years? Okay. Lara.
Speed of delivery, personalisation, finishing touches, excellence in packaging, and always at the top of the agenda, I think, if we're smart, sustainability.
Fantastic. Now, do speed and sustainability ever clash horns?
Yeah, they can. I mean, it takes us and Yogi Bear and others a lot longer to bring a product to market, because we give a toss about even the piece of plastic tape on the packaging. And we've made mistakes like that because you think you've cracked it, and then somebody thinks it's a good idea to put bubble wrap. So there's real attention to detail.
Yeah, love this pithy start. Let's keep that pace. Roan.
I think for me, it was when the pandemic happened and lockdown kicked in. It was a real pivotal opportunity for customer loyalty, and a real you could either make or break it at that point, because people were looking to the businesses and the suppliers that they worked with to see how they were going to step up and help them. And that was a really people were under a huge amount of financial pressure. So a real simple thing, we did payment holidays. One of our customers came to us and said that their business was struggling and they're going to be struggling to afford our service. We didn't charge them for 6 months to give them that opportunity.
So that kudos, that's compassionate of you. Is that now to what extent is that now part of their expectation?
I think people get the fact that there's, hopefully we're not going to be living in a never-ending series of pandemics, right, and lockdowns. But that kind of gesture, that kind of not just a symbolic gesture, but I think that gesture goes a powerful way to building relationships. People don't expect it all the time, but they know that you had their back when it really, really counted, and I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. So are you filing, Sophie, whatever happened over this last 2 years as extraordinary times, or is what we've seen the way it is now?
I think it probably is the way it is now, and I think some of the things that have happened have just been, it's just speeded things up really, hasn't it? And, I totally agree with the points already made, and it's very much around that personalisation, as Lara said, and just communicating with people. The business that I was running in the pandemic was 95% big events. And overnight, that just totally went. So it was very much about going back to those basics and making sure that those fantastic relationships that we built with clients continued, and how could we service them online? And online became a super, super crowded market. So how do you stand out? How do you continue to deliver excellent service when everyone's competing in the same space? And it's hard, but I think it's going back to relationships.
Yeah, so we're going to dig into that relationships point momentarily. I want to get everyone in on this first question. Piers, what have you seen change? You're looking after so many customers.
I think fundamentally nothing has changed really. I think it's speeded up. I think things have been more digital. But we at Moblox, we're focused on small business owners, and they've had a huge amount of uncertainty. But they want things to be better, simpler, ideally cheaper, faster, and especially more flexible. So I think they're still looking for the same things. The mix has changed. I think more and more people are looking online and looking at a more digital space for it. So you've got to make sure that all those factors, you can deliver them in a digital space, which I think can be hard to do if it's something you're not used to. So
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you're saying the customers become more demanding.
They've become more demanding, I guess, but also the fact that the ones that fared the best during COVID, the pandemic, are the ones that became more digital. They pivoted, they moved online. So lots of those businesses and their customers, it's new. So you have to just, the secret is always just talk to them and ask them what their issues are. Yeah. Don't always ask them what they want, because they might not know how to do it. Ask them what their issues are, and then just reflect it back as much as possible and keep iterating. That's just the way you need to work these days.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Michael, you look after some extraordinary clients. You also interview them for change makers. What have you seen change?
So I would agree with all of the panellists to say that there's been a major pivot to digital, both in terms of the way we work and the way we buy. The question is, we just don't know to whether that has created the next chapter of change that we're all now going to live in, or the degree to which things might balance out, given where we go from here. And I think this is the point: is that when you go through something like a pandemic or a major global moment, is that it's very rarely that the first few months and weeks are the real understanding of actually what has really changed. So I think that what we are living in is a world that's very uncertain. There's a lot of things that are up in the air, and I think that what it means is that customers are more. Yes, they're more demanding because they're also more empowered, because they know that they can do things and make choices with their products, and of course they can punish companies that they don't approve of as well. And I think this also explains why many of the larger companies are treading very carefully right now in terms of their relationships with their customers.
So if this was family fortunes or whatever it's called in the States, and I say, so what is the secret to not just getting but keeping customers? Okay, I'm going to take out the top answer, which is just be brilliant. just deliver amazing products and services. So that's gone. So we're going to have to get deeper than that. And you can go as practical or as edgy as you like. Piers, let's dig into this.
So I'm a big believer in you've got to build a relationship. So the days of flogging stuff because your neighbours might turn up and there's some horrible bugs in your toilet and some big blue ones in an advert, it's gone. So now you've got to build a relationship with your customers, and I've got to believe in you, your brand, sustainability. We're registering as a B Corp as well. So build a relationship. I think I'm a big believer in social plus. The future marketing is communities. So, and that's quite hard to do, but building a community. I don't mean one to avoid them calling your support line.
Help each other.
I mean a real community. That's the
so
future
just to be
as
clear,
well.
you're talking about connecting your customers with each other.
Well, with you and each other as well.
Okay.
Just so they can. It's a way of building a relationship. It's a communications channel.
Let's pause on that point because I think that's a cracker. Anyone got an example of how they've helped their customers connect with each other? I'll let you back in, Piers, but I just want to build on that, just pull on that thread a bit.
I think collaboration is working really well. I mean, there has also been a drop-off since, being trapped. The human is wanting to get out, but there's a nervousness about getting out. So I think you're exactly right. We're in this juxtaposition as to how much is going to say digital and digital habit purchasing versus actually I'd quite like to go out and touch, feel, and select. Mm-hmm. So retail is changing to experiential retail,
yes,
so that they can show a product, but that's different.
And
what the customer, so for example, I have a brand called Kitbricks, outdoors customer, but the more we collaborate with other brands, whether it's Runderwear or an event space, Runfest, run by the Times this summer, those things allow us to improve our community and be authentic about the service proposition.
Yeah, so I think that's a great broader example. Rowan, if I start connecting my customers with each other at FreeAgent, are they all just going to gang up on me and start moaning and complaining together?
Yeah, they might do, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because I think that you have to take the rough with the smooth sometimes. I think to your original kind of question about how do you sort of build customer loyalty, I don't think that people think about customer loyalty in regards to businesses in a fundamentally different way than we think about it in terms with other people and individuals. And I think if you imagine people in your life that you feel a sense of loyalty to, what are the things about that person that make you feel that way? What the characteristics? They're trustworthy, right? They're going to do what they say they're going to do. They care about you, the personalization point, they take an interest in what you probably share the same values. All of these things, I think, are the fundamental things. Now, if you're not living that and your customers are calling you out for that in any way, that's a good thing, right? That's an opportunity for you to kind of go in there and fix that. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing.
Okay, but isn't the worry, Michael, that you sort of end up overstepping your role? And you might say, good work on Lara's investment, but I didn't want a relationship. I wanted a candle. So, because I just don't want us misled. Because otherwise, what are we going to all form a commune? What are we all going to form a commune? I mean, where's this all going?
Well, I think there is a relationship with most things that you buy these days, and I think that this is where issues like brand comes in terms of what people feel. So there is a relationship thing between I buy it because it's cheap and it's cheerful and therefore I can light it and that's the candle. But there is also a relationship where you might want things that speak to broader issues of quality, or you might want to speak to issues like sustainability. And I think that all of these things, they're not in a vacuum. They are part of the day-to-day relationship. And I think it's beholden upon the business entrepreneur to understand is that they're always going to have to get better in this world. I mean, this is one of the great things. The rising tide of customer expectation is nothing to be feared. It's to be celebrated, because that should be the engine of improvement and progress that drives businesses for the future.
And how's that, Lara, by the way, playing out in the boardrooms that you're sitting in on? Are they still to what extent are they picking their battles around price? Or are they happy to be better in other ways?
I mean, being very frank, when I said I was well earlier, I also mean I'm well, but I'm knackered. Mm-hmm. Because the truth is that we've all been in the product sector area, certainly dealing with combustion around price that you can't believe because of freight and now fuel, and it's brutal. So I think the customer. There's no question that lots of people listening will be going, well, we'll put up our prices because everybody else is, right? But actually, I think the way you communicate to your customer and you are authentic about what you're doing and the decisions that you make, I think that's where you also underpin the loyalty and say, look, hands up, here's what's happened, freight did go up 10%. But actually, who's going to bring price back down when freight levels out might be authenticity
and it
underpinned.
sort of goes back to something that Sophie and Piers were saying about levelling with people, about being straight with them.
Absolutely.
Not taking them for fools.
Yeah, completely. And again, it goes back to relationships, doesn't it? Building those relationships, being authentic, telling the truth, and building on that. And then people can accept that and make a choice as to...
Because I guess it's like, because if all you ever deliver is the bad news punchline, I'm putting your rent up, but you don't give them any sense of why, or it's not within the context of a relationship. Piers?
I'm on a different point. So the point is that, you know, if you're building a business, increasingly we're building recurring revenue businesses as well. So the conversion, so winning the customer is one thing. And we all know, read any marketing book, much better to keep a customer than find a new one, turn them into fans, and hopefully they recommend you. That's the perfect storm in terms of marketing. But if you're building a recurring revenue business, if your churn is 5%, and you reduce your churn to 2.5%, because the happier is a better experience, in 5 years' time, your business is twice as big. That's the reality of it. It's mathematical.
I think there's been a shift to the subscription economy, I mean, over the last sort of like 10 years. Actually, very much started within obviously the software space, but now you can do it with food, groceries. You can get a subscription. You can get your cars, you can get clothes, all of these things. And what it immediately does is it shifts the value to like building long-term customer success and loyalty in a way that wasn't there before. Because you made a transactional sale, yeah, okay, you know, you got the person's money. Who cared if they weren't happy afterwards? You know, they'd already paid you. But now if that person is paying you small amounts every single month, you need to keep that person because you've invested all of that money to get them on board, to acquire that customer. You have to pay it back over like a longer period.
So how do you know that?
So your candle's a great example because you burn candles, perfect product. When you get to the end of it, you want to come back and buy another one from you. So
no, you want to buy a refill one from Centred.
Okay. All
right. Well, we could wax lyrical about this for a long time. But my question for you, I'll get on your work in a minute. But my question: what does the dashboard look like? How do you know what your customers think about you anyway? Just give us a quick run. What's the dashboard?
How do I think? Well, so we have like lots of metrics, and we use typically what we call a balanced scorecard, which is like you can't just be good in one area. So like like Piers is saying, you can have really happy customers, but are they engaging frequently with your product? Do they stay with you? What's your return and retention? Our headline metric would be our net promoter score, which hopefully many people know here. It's the answer to that question.
In the old days, 64% of customers left because of neglect. I wonder whether it's 64% of customers leave because I'm pissing them off with how much content I'm giving them.
Pestering.
Correct.
That's what I'm talking about.
This is the balance.
You're my electricity provider. Stop saying hello.
Yeah.
Just reduce your prices.
But actually, maybe then have a conversation and allow your customer to let you know how much they do want to hear from you. Our customers are really smart, right?
Because it's a bit soft. So Michael and Sophie, though, Piers in a second, but because for some of your businesses, these are high-value clients. So how do you know, especially if you're not physically seeing them, how do you know how they feel, how they're really feeling about you and the firm? You've built an amazing firm.
We used to do this really well in my previous business because we did have high-value clients. So we had a decent-sized number of clients, and they were all high value. And at the end of each project, we would send out a survey, which sounds a bit laborious, but it wasn't. It would take them 2 minutes to do. And we were asking them really direct questions about would they recommend us and how they rated us in various things, which then gave us an opportunity to follow up with them at the end of the project, ask them about anything that they had concerns about. But we always had 100% of clients saying they would recommend us and work with us again, and we had very long-term relationships.
Really good question to ask. Michael, what have you learned?
I'm just thinking about this. I mean, obviously in the consumer space, there's huge amounts of money that is spent on net promoter scores, on all sorts of ways of trying to track algorithms and conversations. I think in the B2B space, it's a slightly different environment because it starts potentially with asking your client. I mean, I'm sorry to give a fairly old school answer, but I've always felt that a complaining customer is actually a customer that wants a conversation and wants to sort something out. Beware the silent customer. Right. That's the one to really worry about, the one that goes really quiet, because that's the one that's probably thinking about their future and what comes next. So I think in kind of service economies is that relationship is really important to get right, and understanding how customers feel is hugely important.
Right, so we're going to get a bit more provocative as we go. I'd like some questions from you on what you've heard so far, so please stand by in the studio. I see some questions coming through here. Here's a good one. What do you think young businesses are doing correctly right now? For example, Netflix, not so young anymore, is it? They're huge. Is it great branding, or do they just know their audience well? Well, they have literally opened up their playbook on this. But would anyone like to make an observation on this sort of next gen of very hyper-growth tech businesses? Piers?
Well, what's interesting in the likes of Netflix is you think they're next gen and they're the winner, and you can already see that the disruptors are being disrupted. So, you can never stop. Disney's eating their lunch.
So who's
their
disrupting
growth.
Netflix then?
Well, it's big players, obviously, but increasingly also, in social or content, you will see it drill down into niches. So you don't need to be on Netflix. But, they're doing particularly well. But even those companies, you look at Facebook, Meta, they cannot sit on their laurels and expect to just continue growing, because if they don't innovate, listen to customers, change what they do to reflect that, what customers actually want, then they will have their lunch eaten, and they will become the acquirer, not the acquirers.
Yeah. Can I come in? I think they never lose the startup mentality. I mean, when you read everything that Reed Hastings talks about, it's about he's got this great saying that if an idea doesn't at first appear stupid, it's not worth doing, right? Remember is that when Netflix first came into the marketplace, it was written off as a mail order business. It was seen as it was never going to replace. Yeah. Now, I think what's happened is that obviously they've become the status quo. The status quo is quite a dangerous place for a business to be, because actually when you're number one, you've probably only got one place you can go after that. I think that the constant act of reinvention explains a lot about what Netflix is up to.
Jeff, as I call him, Jeff Bezos gives everyone a door, doesn't he, as their desk, because he wants to keep them hungry, keep them keen and all that, day one and all that. Has anyone got a practical tip? Because fostering the starter mentality works.
It's quite interesting.
How?
So I was had a drinks last night, actually, with somebody who works in a very large media company, I won't mention the names, and Amazon came in with a product they wanted them to have a look at, and literally he said it was some techies and a shoebox almost, that kind of size, just full of wires and circuit boards and sensors. And they said, look, have a go at this, see what you think. That's Amazon. That's how they think, that's how they operate.
So he's not afraid to be rough and ready.
No, even most starters wouldn't do that.
Can I? If you want to test this out, if you go onto relentless.com, it will be quite interesting as to where it takes you. So that was the first URL that Jeff Bezos registered, and it still goes directly to Amazon, because the core spirit was that we would be relentless in our pursuit of the perfection of retail.
Gosh, I wondered if none of Jeff's picks. I hope not. Good. Are there questions in the room? Well, what are your questions? That's how I should ask it. Because I've got about another 50, but we've got some. I'll take another one. All right. Looking right. Yes, please feel free to say who you are, but you don't have to. Thank you, Jordan. And here it comes.
First of all, thank you, Piers, for allowing me to come today. I got in contact with you on Moblox, and I got a ticket through that, so thank you very much. Your discussion is about retaining customers. Sorry, I'm a little bit nervous. So I wanted to know, my business personally is very much focused on my craftsmanship, and I'm trying to transition from the workshop side of the business side to be able to grow the business so that it can then carry on and grow to possibly further outlets and workshops. But obviously my customers are very focused on me completing the work, because they know me through the YouTube, through Facebook and through my business persona. So how can I translate that workmanship and craftsmanship into the business long term, and help to continue that through?
Right, brilliant question. Can I ask what you're making, sir?
I convert camper vans. So
do you? Can we come and see you in the break? Hey, by the way, can we get a round of applause? Anyone who asks a question, even though they're feeling nervous about it, round of applause. Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. So who wants to have a crack at this? Because a lot of people will say, I want to deal with Mr. Saatchi, not Mr. Saatchi's employees.
But it's a classic, isn't it? Yeah. Which is I'm a salesperson by trade. I shouldn't, that's what I like doing. It's what I'm good at. And so I had to work out, actually, am I the right person to run my business as I grew it. And you've got this even more challenging situation because you're skilled and you have expertise. But that finding the balance between teaching the same level of expertise, one of the things I learned, and I think it's a really important thing, is you'll win a customer, but at the going in of winning the customer, explain from the outset, you don't do all the work, right? You have a valued and trusted team, they're on a growing journey, but equally, why wouldn't you be the one that signs off the finishing touch so that your new team members
It's
are held
thinking of
accountable?
those touch points.
Right,
Sophie,
so thinking about it on
thank you, Lara. Sophie.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you mentioned there that you've got, did you say YouTube and various personal brand things that you're doing? Can you involve the team in those so that they're getting to meet them, so that they recognise their faces as well? So just trying to include them as much as possible. But yeah, it's looking at the little bits that you can do whilst not having to deliver everything.
Let me. So, as you know, I spent the whole of lockdown designing a camper van. Well, it's not a camper van, it's a van conversion. And I've had this conversation with a couple of people like yourself. And Lara's right, it's about, explaining who's actually going to do the work. But at some point, to scale, you've got to productize your workmanship, your craftsmanship into a brand, into a look and feel. People look at it and they know it's your quality and a QA process. So to scale, that's the only way you can actually do it, is you have to pass on the buck. We've got to almost create a handbook in terms of how you deliver you.
And also, even signature finishing touches on the camper van feel that my husband has one the same age as I am. 1967 split screen, but it's actually got Rolls-Royce seats, meaning there's a finishing touch that is his.
All right.
But it's a good example of where personalisation really matters, and also spreading the franchise of your team, because there is a huge boom in the craft economy in this country right now. And actually, if you look at the rise of Etsy and you look at the rise of a whole variety of ways where we just don't want to go to the usual dealers, there's a real interest in this, and actually finding you tends to be the hardest thing to do. So actually, thinking about this in terms of, you need a team because you need to get out there and spread the word is actually a good thing.
Good advice. And this is good because there's a surge of support for this, And I've been through my own camper conversions, but that's between me and my drama coach. Here is the thing, right? It's on team spirit, and I want this from you, Roan, please. I feel like my team is less motivated and disconnected since the pandemic, all working from home. What are some ways I can create more team spirit with my employees? And I just want just a particularly practical thought, if you would.
Yeah, I think it was definitely a challenge. I think for many businesses, you rely on the office environment to kind of support that team camaraderie. So we did a lot. I mean, whenever we moved to working fully remotely, and now we're in more of a sort of a hybrid setup, we still tried to do as much of the things we did, sort of like online events together. We did team building kind of things. We would send our staff little gifts and little things that we know that we were thinking about them. You've just got to be constantly moving to mindset of, okay, you can't do the same things you were doing before. It doesn't do nothing.
It sounds like a rhyme with Michael's "Beware the silent client, beware the silent employee."
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's just throw a curveball in our just final couple of minutes. It seems that losing a customer can only ever be a bad thing. Am I right?
No, I don't think so.
Absolutely not.
Right, tell me.
Well, I mean, at one stage during my first business, we, all praised this particular hotel chain that looked like it was making a lot of our profit. But actually, when you started to analyse and really cost analyse how much pain in the neck they were, how much demand there was, how much was dragging the team into stuff that wasn't core to our strategy, actually, in the end, deciding either to put up the price and, by the way, charge premium for your great service, then the customer decides, are they paying for the whole service they're getting, or are you better without them and everybody else gets a better service?
Sophie, can take a bit of guts to ditch the dodo there.
I mean, there's two things, isn't there? There's that identifying clients that you don't particularly want, and actually that's a great thing, and you can then use more of your energy on those great clients. But then also sometimes, and I suppose I'm thinking back to my corporate years where I was with John Lewis for a long time, where we were very well known, still are, for excellent customer service. And actually sometimes when things go wrong, it's then how do you put it right, and how do you show them that you're being genuine in wanting to put it right. And you often find that those ones then go and tell everyone what a great job you did putting it right.
Yeah, right. So I can sense Hannah Previtt's sort of ears burning, because this point about relationships, by the way, Michael, is liking people underrated or overrated in business? Isn't it just about the money? How much are they bringing in?
I think liking people is hugely rated, and I was thinking about it, is that one of the first things that Nick and I did was when we sat down was we said, don't work for dicks. And that was a very important part of our thinking, right?
Well, it's not the hashtag I was looking for from the morning.
But I think beware the bullies in business, right? Is because I can remember a very young colleague of mine, we lost a very large client, and she sat me down and said, it'll be the best thing that ever happened to us. And you know what? It turned out to be exactly that.
Well, there couldn't be a better message for what is happening in the world right now. Thank you so much, everybody. Massively appreciated. Thank you very much indeed.
I think we're off this way.
Thank you. Well, as our panel leave the stage, I know that tuned into all of that, Hannah, you have been listening intently. What did you make of that?
What a fascinating conversation. And I really enjoyed Michael's presentation earlier, some pictures of his dogs. Who doesn't like a dog picture to get us all going in the morning? And I was with one of our mutual friends the other day, Alex Cheetle, you know him very well, Ollie, who said dogs look like their owners, which I thought was really interesting. But he was talking about in business, the business that you create reflects very much the person. And I just thought that was really interesting and seemed to align perfectly with some of what Michael was saying. Also around kind of inspired and engaged employees working harder and staying longer, and again thinking about the skills shortages at the moment. That's really important. So I think making sure that your team are happy and fulfilled has never been more of a big business imperative. So yeah, how about you, Ollie? What did you enjoy from that session?
Well, to be honest, I just wish we'd had a bit longer, because I love this idea of being in the privileged position to be able to choose who you work with. And if an organisation just isn't working with you in ways that make you feel more alive or fulfilled, then dare to think differently, which is almost sacrilege in some circles, but that really intrigued me. Hannah, let me just say one thing. This afternoon, we've got a very interactive session. It is a breakout with Connex Hub's founder, Mark Trowbridge, who's in the studio with us, on why all businesses should employ more freelancers. So I'm very intrigued by that. If I could clone myself, I would be there. But Hannah, you're waiting backstage. We're going to have a very brief coffee break here through the main studio and out in our main spaces through those double doors. But stay tuned at home. I'll hand you over to the brilliant Hannah Previtt.
Thank you very much, Ollie. No coffee break for you here, Michael. If you could come and join me in the hot seat for your third and final grilling of the morning. Thank you for bearing with us. Really interesting session from you up there on stage. I was interested to hear a few people talk about B Corps, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously you work with many of them at Seven Hills. I mean, does it actually matter? Does anybody care? If everyone is a B Corp, does it kind of dilute the value?
Well, I think they're a long way from everybody being a B Corp, but I think there's definitely a big sort of rise in interest in them. And of course, I think what they're asking companies to do is change their articles of association, think about people, planet, and purpose in terms of the future. I think what they've got to make sure is they keep the standards high. And at the moment, there's a lot of companies that want to be a part of it. I chair the entrepreneurs team at Coots, and what they've just become a B Corp, and it's a transformational agent of change for a business to think about the contribution it's making, and really B Corp's a good way of doing that.
So just for anybody at home who doesn't know what it means, just in short, can you tell us the process? Because it's pretty arduous, isn't it?
It's a grilling, right? I think they're not just giving this away. You go through a points-based system where you're building up a review of your company in terms of its processes, in terms of really its ethical responsibilities, its relationship with employees, its equity structure, lots of things about being a good employer and fairness and in the workplace, and I think that the sustainability angle also drives in, and these are all sections, and you're scored over a process by assessors. Once you're in, you get B Corp accreditation, and you see lots of FMCG brands that use it really successfully in their relationships on supermarket shelves, things like that. So it has a commercial benefit, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And on the mission side of things, for some businesses, like the example that you gave on stage earlier with Dash, incredible brand, it doesn't come as easily, right? So Ollie was saying about choosing, kind of choosing that messaging. What about if you kind of rack your brains and there is nothing? Can you fake it till you make it?
I don't think you have to. I honestly would say that I think every business can look inside and say, well, what is it that we do good and well, and what makes a difference? And I really do believe that, I'm yet to sort of come into an environment where I think this is a company that makes no difference, right? I think because it's not a good outcome for companies that make no difference, right? You know, in the longer run.
But if you think about a company that just makes a widget and they think they can source them better from the Far East, or they can get them cheaper for their customer, it might be a bit harder for them to kind of reflect upon themselves and say, well, actually, we have a deeper mission.
But that's a short-term opportunity, right? You know, in the longer run, is that, you know, the rise of consumers that are conscious about their choices and what goes into their products. I mean, you see that in supply chains now, where, you know, those widget manufacturers, if they're supplying, you know, large automotive brands like BMW and others, is that they want to know that their supply chain is pure, and actually it's being delivered by companies that they can stand up and be counted by. And I think that, you know, this idea of kind of like cut corners, that, you know, don't do it right until you can afford to do it, I think that's a really sort of counterproductive way of looking at it. I think the opportunity is get it right from the get-go.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to necessarily be a big thing, a big kind of charitable cause. It could just be, if you're making widgets, you're going to make the best widgets, you're going to build a great team. It can be some of those more simple things, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that, you know, it's so much more than a charitable cause. I mean, it should speak to something that you do. It should speak to an inner sense of, actually, this is the difference we make. This is our intent as a company. And I think that, you know, a purposeful company starts by being a great company in what it does. And you're right. I mean, having a real passion for what you do is the first big step going forward. Because if you have a passion for it, then you tend to care about it. And if you care about it, you want to do it right.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much for coming and joining us here this morning.
Great to see you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. I'm now going to be joined by Lara. If you could come and join me here.
Hello, gorgeous.
Hello.
How are you?
Lovely to see you. Lovely to see you. So one thing that really struck me by what you were saying up there was about, you said you're tired, by the way, you would never know.
Thank you.
But there'll be lots of entrepreneurs watching at home thinking, I'm bloody tired. It's been a really tough 2 years. Just how do you keep going? You've been in business a while now. You've had an incredibly successful career, but there's always hard days, right?
Yeah, there are. And I think disproportionately we have been thrown into a number of hard days for a long, long time. And I think there's an honesty. In fact, I was asked to speak at an accounting conference yesterday. They should never let me in, never let me loose. But, you know, the reality that people are speaking up and actually saying, I need a bit of breathing space. So I think, you know, that thing about agility, about, you know, Poets' Day, let people go early on a Friday, do things that give them absolute flexibility, because our life has been turned upside down. And I don't think, I'm currently doing a speech around the dinosaur, the elephant and the rhino, because the dinosaur is the person not realizing that things are going to change for good. The elephant is in the room. Are we going to challenge the leadership and say, actually, come on, we can be better than this. Let's talk about it. Because when we talk about it, actually people come with great flexibility and ideas, and maybe you shouldn't dictate. And then the rhino is, it is crunch time. You know, we've got a younger generation that are looking at businesses differently, the rise of B Corp, sustainability, the importance of plastic free. If we can take a breath from time to time and lead by example. But I sat in a car last Friday off and on as I watched my godson play hockey. I was still working a bit, but nobody minded when I showed them the BMW car inner as my office of the day for my calls. Mm-hmm. Because actually I think there's a down-to-earthness about people realising we have life again. Mm-hmm. Let's enjoy it, let's find a balance, and let's be fair to our teams.
Mm-hmm. And there is something there, isn't there, about leading by example. And I think you see some founders, we won't name them, of particularly kind of fintech. There's that bit of kind of a bro culture. Yeah. You knew what I was going to say there. And, you know, it's kind of work all the hours. They'll send emails all around the clock, and they expect everyone to live and breathe the business like they do. And that's not always fair,
That was a huge learning for me, because when I was younger, I used to think, why can't they work? Why can't they live, breathe? Well, actually, they're not shareholders, some of them. Right? And when you're a shareholder, you die for the value. And, you know, I'm still bonkers, but I have better perspective and I split my time. But equally, you know, I think if you want a really motivated team and you want to have them be at their best, we all need to break. Mm-hmm. I mean, I literally have a hands-off day where I send never an email on a Saturday now. But I always dip into making a mistake because I'm passionate and I love what I do and I want to get it moving. And you just have to be realistic and say, you know, back off a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, a great piece of advice to leave us with. So thank you very much. So
nice
lovely to see you, Lara. See you. Thank you very much. Sophie, you're next.
Hello.
Hello, good to see you again. What I really want to dig into with you is some of the things that you do outside of your kind of day job that we were hearing about up there, because that's all what kind of rounds you out, isn't it, as an entrepreneur, as a kind of portfolio businesswoman. So tell us a bit about some of the other things that you're involved with in Newcastle.
I'm the kind of person that just literally says yes to everything and then kind of panics about how I'm going to deliver everything. So some of the other things that I'm involved in at the moment, I'm an author. I've written 2 books. So From Learner to Earner, a book for students to help them get a graduate job, The Ambition Accelerator to help young women with their career aspirations. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of at the moment is that I chair a charity called SmartWorks in Newcastle. So SmartWorks is a national charity. It is supporting unemployed women by giving them interview clothing and coaching. And we operate across the whole of the North East. So it's not just Newcastle, it's the whole of the North East. And we're aiming to double the number of women that we support this year. So we're looking to support 720 women. So a really, really exciting responsibility.
And so how do you find the time? How do you fit it all in?
It's really hard.
Do you sleep?
I do sleep. And actually, do you know what? Getting a good night's sleep helps me to do all of those things. I'm a bit of an early bird. I'd rather go to bed early and get up early and just crack on. I'm at my best in the morning, absolutely. And, you know, that helps. But I think if it's stuff that you want to do, you find the time to do it, don't you? You find the time. And you surround yourself with a good team so that you can delegate quite a bit.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some of that with us. I think we should all make sure we check it out. SmartWorks.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a national charity. I think we've got 8 branches throughout the country, but Newcastle is the one to check out.
Well, thank you very much for all your work you're doing there. Great to meet you, Sophie. Piers, you're up next. Hello, good to see you again. It's like a reunion here, isn't it? Exactly.
Feels like a long time ago there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It really does. It's a long time in a pandemic, isn't it? A year. So what I really wanted to hear from you is about social media, actually, because we were talking there about kind of branding and how you connect with customers.
Yeah.
You're very good on social media. Have you got, obviously it helps that you have a big following because of TV and your career so far, but how do you connect with customers and people you want to do business with on social media, and do you have any tips for our audience?
Well, it's actually quite hard. You say I'm good at it. I struggle with it sometimes.
And you'd never know that.
Well, to do it, you actually need to have, and we're getting there now with the team as well, you need to be consistent. So who are you? So make sure that it's very clear in terms of the content you're communicating, and then be consistent about it. And clearly awareness is a function of the quality of the content, how relevant it is, and also the volume of it as well. So you've got to put a lot out there, and then when you get the feedback, like we were talking about earlier, is talk to your followers and say, is this the right content? Are you relevant? And if you can't do that, look at the stats and then try something different. It's all about data at the end of the day. And then try something different and see if that works. And eventually you get what I call not product market fit, content market fit. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Even as a journalist, right, we have to push out all of our own content now. And it's just another thing to do on the ever-growing to-do list. We've got a question from Jacqueline Trotman, who asks what the positives and negatives are for outsourcing elements of your business in the early days. I think I've come to the right person to ask this question to, but perhaps you might only tell me about the positives. But yeah, there
are negatives.
There are.
Yeah.
But of course, some of it's down to cost, right? Obviously, it's much more cost-effective to outsource elements rather than hire full-time staff.
Well, it's cost and it's flexibility as well. So, Moblox, we're building a team, quite a lot of software engineers, and I've sort of been looking at how I want to structure that team. So I want the core team inside the tent, as I call it. But as we burst into certain requirements or specialisms, then it probably doesn't make sense to hire them. I don't want the overhead. And they might cost more than actually an employee, but actually it's going to be for shorter period of time. So the key thing really is flexibility. When you're building a business, what you ideally want are variable costs. So you don't want too many fixed costs, because as a business moves, they don't. And that creates risk. If your costs are moving with the business up and down, they're variable. That reduces operational risk. And by outsourcing some things, you can make that work. In some cases, you can't outsource. Sometimes you need to have people inside the tent. But try and stay as flexible as possible, negotiate. And especially in small businesses, flexibility is key. Fixed costs kill small businesses.
That's really interesting. A really good piece of advice there for people watching at home. Are there any specific parts of the business that are better or easier to outsource than others? For example, we often talk about FDs, so like part-time FDs.
Yeah.
People, startup scale-ups often talk about the FD as being a really crucial role when you're scaling. Obviously, somebody watching the money in and the money out. Are there some roles that you shouldn't outsource?
I think key, co-founder, senior roles, I call it inside the tent. But depending on the size of your business as well, if you're a small business, then ideally you want to outsource admin. You want to focus on the things you're good at. There was a guy in the audience earlier, and he was saying that he's a craftsman. So he should be a craftsman or a salesperson. He shouldn't be spending time doing bank recs at the weekend. He should be using software to automate as much as he possibly can, so you can focus on where you add the most value.
Great advice. As always, thank you so much, Piers. It's been really good to see you again. I think we're now going to be joined by our final guest over here. Watch the light on your way out. Hello, our first time meeting. Welcome backstage with us here. I was really interested to hear you talking about subscription earlier as a model. It reminds me of a training session I went to on why everything isn't a podcast, because everybody wants to do a podcast and everything.
Yeah.
Everything isn't a subscription, is it?
It's not, but you see there's definitely an attempt to move it in that direction, and there's a lot of really good reasons for that. And from a financial perspective, it makes a huge amount of sense for businesses because, I think as Piers just mentioned there, one of the things that you want is predictability in your revenue. So in a subscription business, there are challenges with it in terms of it'll take you a while to build up that revenue, but when it's there and you have good customer retention, it's very, very reliable. So you're seeing many, many more businesses from, Netflix to obviously software companies to, like I mentioned before, clothing companies, grocery companies, trying to build this as a model. Now, that maybe that isn't always what consumers want, and I think there's maybe a tension there between what sometimes people just want to buy something and move on versus what businesses are trying to do. I think for the businesses, it's about how can you demonstrate value on an ongoing basis to be able to sort of justify that subscription. But it's certainly attractive from a business perspective.
Yeah, it can be a busy old market though, isn't it? And also, just from a personal point of view, people don't want to have hundreds of subscriptions, do they? So you have to make sure you really stand out. And that comes to one of our questions we've got here from somebody watching at home. How you stand out, above and beyond the competition, particularly if you're in a really crowded market. This person owns a bakery. So how you can, make sure that people come and buy your bread, your croissants, whatever it is that they're making beyond, a rival. So have you got any kind of advice around competition and making sure you can stand out?
I think it's all about differentiation at the end of the day. We are in a very, very competitive market. We have some big competitors who are well funded, big companies, but we really tried to sort of focus on a niche, and it was something that we saw the other players in the market weren't necessarily doing. So we focused in on that and really made sure that we were the absolute best at delivering that. So you've got to think as what's unique about you, either in your brand or your product and service, and really double down on that, because that's going to be the way you're going to get cut through and you're going to be able to differentiate.
And so we heard a lot there before from Michael about mission and purpose. What's your mission?
So our mission at FreeAgent is to make micro businesses happier and more successful by putting them in control of their finances. Rolls off the tongue. And that is something that we communicate a lot internally as a business, because everything we do, we call that our North Star. So everything we do, we should believe that it's in service of that mission in some way. So I do think that that people want to work for purpose-led companies, and I think people want to buy from companies that have values that they resonate with as well. So I do actually believe that increasingly is an important aspect of doing business.
And is it something that you want your teams to bear in mind? Like, how do you make sure that they're on board with the mission at all times? Is it something you kind of drum into them when they're onboarded?
Yeah, absolutely it is. We spend a lot of time communicating both our values, but our mission and purpose as well. But I think it's not a case of drumming it into stuff. I think it's something that people is attractive as an employer. People want to work for companies that are doing something that's meaningful, that's going to benefit society in some way. So I think it's as much about a recruitment tactic as it is about anything else, because people don't just want to work for a corporation that's just cranking out stuff and making money without really caring about the impact that they're having on society. So it is really about attracting great talent as well.
And it's, I think, increasingly during the pandemic, people have got on board with micro businesses and small businesses, right? We've seen a real trend towards people wanting to buy from their high streets rather than buying from Amazon or one of the other big giants, haven't we? So I can see there's probably a lot of demand for sorts of services you're offering?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we are in a reasonable size company now, but I think people really want that. They want that sort of like, maybe not face-to-face, but that closer human interaction and that great customer service. And that's something that we've always paid a huge amount of attention to as well, is really going above and beyond with the customer support and the service that we provide. And people really appreciate that. And again, it's the topic of what we were talking about earlier is one of the things that's going to really strengthen customer loyalty.
Mm-hmm. Well, great. Thank you for bringing us full circle back to the topic from earlier. So
Fantastic.
thank you very much. It was really
Excellent.
great to meet you.
Great.
Thank you.